to ever be Secretary of State. Giving mullahs that hate us and chant death to America, $150 billion in cash. You're an idiot. It's all the time we have left. Let not your heart be troubled. The news continues. Laura, too much news. I don't want to talk tonight.
All right, Hannity, I'm not going to steal your time. You're not going to steal mine. I hear you're like stealing Tucker's time or something.
Steal?
Yeah, you take other people's time.
You see, I throw
like
you
mine.
the clock. I say, go. And what do? You start yapping.
I have to tease you. It's people are looking forward to that every night. You had a great show, as always,
Have a great
Hannity.
show.
All
Take it
right,
away.
talk to you soon. Welcome to the Ingraham Angle. I'm Laura Ingraham. It is a very busy Wednesday night in the nation's capital. Treason. That's what the president's response was to an anonymous op-ed written by a senior administration official who claims there is a resistance movement inside the White House. Counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway, will be here in moments to react. But first, journalism, RIP. That's the focus of tonight's angle. This is what it's come to. The once revered New York Times, the paper of record, has now become the paper of rumor. As part of its unrelenting vendetta against President Trump, the Times today published a column by someone whom they do not identify. The senior Trump staffer, under the cloak of anonymity, spins a wildly unflattering tale of a president supposedly unhinged from reality, making impulsive decisions that supposedly blindside and frustrate top officials who are in perpetual damage control. Of course, almost on cue, the press went wild.
In a stunning new op-ed in the New York Times, an unnamed top Trump administration official excoriates the president and reveals a resistance bloc within the Trump team trying to protect the country from the commander-in-chief.
It is an extraordinary piece in the New York Times that really backs up Bob Woodward's book.
The column in the New York Times is extraordinary.
I've never seen anything like this in modern presidential history.
This is incredibly unusual, almost unprecedented.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just watched them and I howl. It's like the Roadrunner and the Coyote all over again. All right, the gist of the piece, by the way, is that you, the people, are lucky that Trump is checked by a noble band of staffers, the writer included, of course. They refer to themselves as part of the resistance. Well, the column further alleges that the root of the problem is the president's amorality. He is not moored to any discernible first principles. Well, America First is either too difficult a concept for the columnist to understand, or he just disagrees with it altogether. The president's agenda was clearly laid out in the campaign and pursued aggressively in his first 20 months in office. Lower taxes, less regulation, stronger border enforcement, less military interventionism, and fairer trade deals. Oh, and let's not forget his pledge to appoint judges who are faithful to their Article III duties under the Constitution. Brett Kavanaugh comes to mind. If Mr. or Ms. Anonymous loathes the Trump agenda so much, well, he or she has no business being in the White House. This is not a loyal public servant. This is a disgruntled employee, part of the failed GOP establishment that lost power and now want it back by any means necessary. Anonymous is a mole and a fraud. You know, this has the feel of the flim-flammery of the Steele dossier, doesn't it? Constructed in advance by Trump's vicious political opponents. And as with the dossier, the American people have no way of judging the veracity of its outlandish and defamatory claims. So we're supposed to just take the word of Trump's adversaries, no questions asked. How convenient. The column is rife with all these dramatic flourishes intended to titillate and feed the media beast. Like this line: the president continues to act in a manner that is detrimental to the health of our republic. How about his actions? Policies that have improved the lives of millions of Americans, including African Americans, Latino Americans, women, small business owners, et cetera, et cetera. Is all that detrimental to the republic? Anonymous claims he wants the president to be successful and does admit some of these accomplishments, but he insists that These successes have come despite, not because of, the president's leadership style, which is impetuous, adversarial, petty, and ineffective. Okay, sure, Trump can be impatient and loses his cool. And he can be frustrated, as all of us are, with the pace of Washington. And, of course, also with the media. Big whoop. And if I had to guess, and I'm just guessing here, I'd say that somewhere along the line, Mr. No Name probably had his widow feelings hurt by the president. 2 words: man up. If you think so highly of yourself and really stand by your claims, step forward and identify yourself. The kicker in this piece is when Anonymous claims that the cabinet officials, so distraught by the president, even toyed with the idea of invoking the 25th Amendment. This blared across all of cable news.
It lays out the path for removal of the president in cases of, quote, inability, and that's a term that has never been defined or tested.
The idea that the 25th Amendment would ever be used is really hard to contemplate that we're at that point.
Why won't Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell today convene a hearing on the 25th Amendment? I would haul up political appointees from every agency and ask who talked about invoking the 25th Amendment and what did you see?
Thank you, William O. Douglas. Well, make no mistake. This is part of a persistent drumbeat. It started in the wake of the election. The deep state, with its faceless, nameless sources, launched their own internal campaign against Trump. Then the beat was taken up by everyone from Michael Wolff to even the esteemed Bob Woodward. The president should be judged by his policies and the results that he delivers for the American people, not by the embittered tales of a would-be whistleblower hiding behind the skirts of the gray lady. And that's the angle. Joining me now for reaction, White House counselor to the president, my friend of too many years to count, Kellyanne Conway. All right, Kellyanne, this is wild. I mean, I've never seen this. I've been in this town for 30 years. You escaped to New York for a while, but I've been in this town for a long time. An anonymous staffer strikes up some relationship with the New York Times, and they're convinced to pen this op-ed. What are your thoughts?
I'm not sure it matters. There are op-eds like that in the New York Times every day. It's just a different byline, or I guess a non-byline here. I just have to correct the record. It's not clear to us anyway that it's somebody in the White House. So they're saying senior administration official. That could be many people. There are, I think, thousands of political appointees, hundreds of folks who would qualify under that title alone. But to your point, presidents aren't judged by the noise or even the silence that's occurring at any one moment or any one week by the usual critics and naysayers. They're judged by the metrics. And when I hear people on cable news, even today in your montage, I confess I hadn't seen any of it before now, say words like historic, unprecedented, stunning. That's exactly the way we describe the economy. It's exactly the way we describe the way he's chopped down all the overburdensome, duplicative, and unnecessary regulations. This is a historic and unprecedented economic boom time. And the Democrats would take that away. And he knows that, because you saw the president today respond the way many of us who have the privilege of working in the White House see him respond all the time, not fuming, not infuriated, not isolated. He took it right to what was already a planned event with the sheriffs who are lined up there to thank this president for being pro-law enforcement, to making sure they have the resources and the respect they deserve. No. And he took it out of his pocket and he read his statement and he pushed back on this op-ed.
Any of this stuff true? Any of the things that are in this op-ed ring true at all in the slightest?
What rings true to me is that people are trying to have it both ways. They want to serve in the government, and they're pretending that they're somehow protecting the country from Donald Trump. You see that all throughout the Woodward book.
But is this a fault of staffing? I mean, we have a very small presidential personnel office compared to Obama. I think half the staffers, last time I checked. I know Johnny DeStefano seems like he's a good guy.
But it really depends who it is. In other words, it depends who it is.
But we've always been concerned from the beginning that there were people in this administration who did not buy into the Trump agenda, looked down upon it, thought we can thwart the agenda, whether it's the wall or, and they were kind of laughing at the agenda. And I was worried about it. A lot of like-minded people who were with Trump from the very beginning were very worried. I'm still worried about it.
I hear you. We
got an op-ed in the New York Times.
Yes, indeed. And it really depends who it is. But I also think that's not particularly relevant. But meaning like who it is. But what I want to say is...
It could be someone in the West Wing.
It's just, it could be. Here's what I want to say about all of that. That would be a huge problem. But here's what I want to say about all that. It's not, the president said something today I thought really rang true. He said the New York Times had apologized to its readers because it got the election so wrong. He's got a good point, which is it's still not clear that many who cover him every day and criticize him thusly understand how he got here and what he's done since he got here and what it all means to people. And that's incredibly important because look at the histrionics on Capitol Hill yesterday. Look at the difference between people trying to protest and disrupt.
Oh, we're getting into that with Lindsey Graham.
Hearing for an eminently qualified individual who today basically schooled some of the senators on the Constitution. And the point I'm making to you is, who put him there? That is the product of Donald Trump's decision-making processes. And so, and speaking of Speaker Ryan and Leader McConnell, they were at the White House today. And you know what came of it? You know what came of these meetings? That they're going to vote, the House is going to vote on making permanent the individual tax cut. So the people saying, oh, they should invoke this amendment, then they're actually continuing with the president's agenda. They know it's working.
But this drumbeat, and it's with Woodward, who has won, won every journalistic award, well respected. By the way, did you see this, like you're mentioning this Woodward deal? Like, this is the goofiest.
Yeah, I'm thrilled.
I don't know if you guys can.
Well, the annotation is.
This is one of the goofiest things I have ever seen. This is a transcript of a call that says nothing, where the president is actually, I think, really cool. But with Woodward saying, well, I'm not gonna, it's probably going to be a lousy book. I'm not really that. And he's like, Kellyanne. He's like, well, there's a part where he talks about Kellyanne. And it's like so idiotic. Like, who cares? So I got to play for you something that that John Kerry, former Secretary of State, Democrat, obviously Obama, said tonight on CNN. Let's watch.
This is a genuine constitutional crisis. This is a moment where it's a crisis of conscience for people in the United States Senate on the other side of the aisle, where they have been willing to be more protective of their chairmanships, of their party, of their president, than they have of the Constitution and the institutions themselves.
Constitutional crisis, but you see this building from whether it's Goofy Omarosa or Woodward to this, Michael Wolff, it goes on and on.
Well, look, there are rumors that John Kerry wants to run and lose again for president. That's his right. It's a free country. He can do that. He's over the age of 35. Go for it. Joe Biden wants to do the same thing. You saw a lot of the 2020 aspirants yesterday trying to embarrass Brett Kavanaugh, but they really embarrassed themselves and the people who were there protesting on their behalf. And the one thing I don't see in the Woodward book, which I think is very fascinating, is Russia collusion. Oh, Kellyanne, why is that relevant? He didn't say he was out. The media spent more time on that story than anything else.
I haven't read the book. I mean, I don't.
But is it in there? In other words, if you're a journalist who took down Richard Nixon, if you're deeply respected in many corners in Washington, D.C., wouldn't somebody who had evidence of that come to you? Wouldn't it leak out?
Well, there's no Russia collusion. This is why they're going to the 25th Amendment tonight.
That's actually important because they're going to say, why is she talking about that? We're talking about, because they pivot. Because when they have nothing to say, they move to the next story.
You did an interview with Woodward, yes?
I did, early on when he came to the White House, very early on when we got there.
What did you guys
And then a year and a half later or so, I went to have lunch with him to find out about the book and what else. But I'm, of course, above board about that. Because we talk about it. I said it to the president. I told the president directly about it.
But this is what I'm saying. I don't like people who go to their car and write memos to the file, like Comey. I don't like people who write anonymous op-eds because it's Loserville. It's people who are afraid to put their names. If you're a whistleblower, you step forward.
But that's why so much of the book is not new.
And you actually use your name.
Well, that's why, but so much of the book is not new because it's the fourth consecutive book that I can see where certain people are trying to feed their own emotions and egos about how brilliant they were on the campaign and when we first got in the White House. And it's just, so that's a little tired. Right. But what I wanted to tell you, too, is I think in that call it's important because Woodward says that he tried through 6 or 7 different people to get an interview with the president. And So I said, would you please give the president all the names? Because the only one he knows is mine. And I don't think that that's been revealed yet because, of course, there's sources for the book. Look, many of the accounts is almost a first-person account of some former colleagues. And I think that's very disappointing. It's very disappointing that some people went on the record and they have. But General Jones in Obama's White House, he left after the Woodward book came out called Obama's Wars and he was the NSA, he was the National Security.
I said this again, from the first week of the administration, we're out of time, but the first week of the administration, there started to be leaks. Actually 2 weeks before the inauguration, leak, Flynn stuff. Like, well,
the leakers aren't difficult to figure out, though.
From the beginning of the administration,
the president knows how I feel about this. The leakers fall into two big categories. People who say they never talk to the media, they hate the media. Oh, I'm so afraid to go on the Ingraham angle, Kellyanne. How do you do it? I can never talk. They talk to the media all day long. The other category is people who never get bad press. So obviously that would be you or me. But people never get bad press.
No,
good leakers.
Kellyanne, thank you so much for coming in.
You got it.
For coming in.
Thank you.
I thought it was just a fascinating conversation with Bob Woodward. They gave him a page of this ridiculous.
You and I are not anonymous.
Yeah, exactly. All right, there were fireworks today at Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court confirmation hearing, with protesters still spouting off while Democrats simply attempted to make a name for themselves.
Acknowledge.
I am prepared to suggest to the committee and ask the committee, humbly, please withhold further hearings until you disclose everything. Why won't you do that?
Me, Dad! Yes, me, Dad!
What we've heard is the noise of democracy. This is what happens in a free country when people can stand up and speak and not be jailed, imprisoned, tortured, or killed because of it.
There's no place in democracy. For all of you who support this, it is un-American.
It is unprecedented for a Supreme Court nominee to be named by a president who is an unindicted co-conspirator.
Oh my gosh. Joining me now for reaction, one of the senators who had a chance to question Judge Kavanaugh today. The Texas continued gallery.
Generation. You get a follow.
Facebook Sheryl Sandberg and Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey were on Capitol Hill today, where lawmakers grilled them about allegations of bias against conservatives. Here's Dorsey trying to explain Twitter's practices.
We don't consider political viewpoints, perspectives, or party affiliation in any of our policies or enforcement decisions.
The allegation that we make, the Republicans, is that you're discriminatory against us, against the Republicans.
We agree that the result was not impartial, and that is why we corrected it and we fixed it.
So you do agree that there were more Republicans than Democrats?
I didn't say that, but I do agree.
Well, you can't have it both ways, sir.
Didn't Jack seemed really bored with the whole hearing? He's like, okay, I'll be here. Joining me now for reaction, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy. You're the reason he showed up into town, but there's no problem here. There's no, look, it's just an algorithm. I mean, there's no problem.
They say there's no problem when we point it out. And you know what happened a couple days before the hearing? Then they admit that there was some problems. Then if you just watch
He said no Republican, no bias. He said
no, they did agree that the algorithm created shadow banning. It just so happens it was just conservatives.
Explain shadow banning for our audience.
What happens on shadow
Doesn't
banning,
yet have a cell phone.
you put something up, nobody sees it. You have all these followers, nobody sees it, and you don't know it.
It's kind of like watching CNN. It's, no one sees it. It's up there, but nobody sees it.
MSNBC, there's more letters than viewers. But the one thing that you have find is the reason these conservatives like Devin Nunes got shadow banned, it wasn't something they did, it was who followed them. It wasn't anything they did, but because of who followed them, the algorithm picked this. And remember what Jack said during this time. Lots of times he said, well, I want to create a standard of fairness. But who determines the fairness? They have this Twitter Trust and Safety Council made up 48 groups. There's only one of those groups that leans partly towards the middle. The rest are
it's all
liberal.
lefty. Oh, so they're setting the standards.
Exactly. And this algorithm, I pointed out to you. I follow you on Twitter. You talked about conservatives in Sweden because of
the election's coming up.
Yeah,
The Sweden Democrat Party, which is anti-migrant invasion, is going to win.
The algorithm said that was sensitive because I have the sensitive mark. Why would an algorithm pick something about immigration?
All right, we got to talk about this deal with the anonymous column. Lots of allegations, very self-serving. The anonymous guy looks like he's just awesome, Superman, and the rest of us need to be saved.
This man is a coward. If it's a man or woman, or if it really someone? But the idea that this person has a taxpayer's job.
Somewhere in the government. Could be
somewhere
anywhere.
in the government, supposed to be serving the president who the taxpayers elected, but he thinks he is such an elitist that they know better than the voters, that they are protecting the voters in some way. I agree with the president. I think it is a real problem that they should come forward and say who this person is.
Yeah, I asked Lindsey Graham about this, and he kind of brushed it aside. The president said this is a national security concern. He said in the op-ed, and I think it's a he, but he said in the op-ed that he's working and others are working to thwart the president's agenda. And he calls Trump anti-democratic? That's anti-democratic.
That goes against the Constitution.
Right.
Where you're about to serve. That's why this person is a coward. If this person...
It could be traitorous, kind of. I mean, it's maybe a little stretch, but it
is traitorous that you're serving in an administration, you're saying you're at a senior level, and all you're doing is undermining the person that the American people elected to be president? And think about what this president has been able to achieve. But this person sits there and does this?
Could it be, maybe it's not a political appointee, maybe it's a civil servant. It could be just one of the thousands of civil servants in senior positions. I mean, I worked in...
Yeah, but this person tries to write like they're in a really place of power.
Yeah.
The things that they claim.
But who believes that? I mean, I don't believe any of this stuff. Any rumblings of a 25th Amendment invocation?
No.
Have you ever heard anything like that from anyone in positions of power over there?
No, and I work with that cabinet almost every single day. I was with the president today. This is the thing I love about this man. He could have all these false things said about him. He does not lose track of what needs to get done. He's focused, let's secure the border. Let's get the tax 2.0 done. Let's make sure that we're securing Social Security. I mean, he is focused, and he never...
But he's impatient because there's a lot of you-know-what going on in Washington. It's slow rolling his agenda sometimes, and he gets ticked off, and I don't blame him. But what I really don't like is when we have staffers close to the president who don't like his agenda, who aren't pushing his agenda, and who are whispering to the New York Times or writing op-eds. That's a problem. I don't care. Everyone brushes this. That's a problem. It's been a problem from the beginning.
And they were never there to help him. They were never there to help him.
No, they were there to undermine him from the beginning. And the GOP establishment's still trying to get back power. Love the hearing today. And I think
it's just the first. We're going to continue. And why wasn't Google? Google did not show up.
They're too busy in China.
But I got to give credit to Twitter, to Jack, and to Facebook for showing up.
They came. Cheryl came and Jack came.
They need to show.
We'll call Sergey's office, see if the current CEO can stop by. Congressman, thank you so much. And let's get a reaction to all today's news from Monica Crowley, Senior Fellow with the London Center for Policy Research, and John Summers, former aide to Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. All right, Monica, let's start with you. We go from the Woodward book, basically indicating to the MSNBC crowd that Donald Trump doesn't have his mental faculties, to this today in the New York Times. Your reaction?
Well, Sarah Carter reported earlier today, Laura, that the president is actually perhaps poised to declassify about 20 FISA warrant documents. So it's no wonder now that we're getting this fierce new flurry of anti-Trump attacks, because it's all about deflection from their original conspiracy, trying to project it onto the president of the United States. So keep a close eye on that. But Laura, what we see in this New York Times column is confirmation of everything that we have been saying for the last 2+ years, which is that there is this covert rolling coup against the president, that there is this unelected shadowy group, some in the administration, some without, the establishment, the media, all targeting
working.
Donald Trump because he represents an existential threat to all of them. Therefore, he must be destroyed. We were laughed at. We were mocked, Laura, for saying this for all this time, that there is this soft coup against Donald Trump. And now we actually have a piece of evidence from somebody
That's a great point.
resisting leading this coup.
Yeah. I mean, they're just like the left in one way. They still can't believe he won. And he's like actually doing this stuff. You know, he hasn't gotten the wall built, but we'll hope some of that happens. But he's done a lot of what he pledged and more and more and more. But, John, I want your perspective on this. The left is like, this is, you know, feeding candy to a baby. The left is thrilled. We got Trump now. It's like, Wile E. Coyote is going to get the Roadrunner. What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't know. It's hard to hear over the sound of the black helicopters flying all around us between accusations against tech and then this thing coming out. I mean, the one thing I do agree on is that there really wasn't anything new in this op-ed. As a former reporter myself and someone who served on the Hill, I've never been a fan of single-sourced, you know, anonymous pieces like that. I just don't like them. But that said, there was no real news in this op-ed. What it was is a confirmation of what we've been hearing about this White House for, as you said, the last 2 years. And I think that's the part that's got to be concerned. That's probably the part that made the Times comfortable in printing it from an anonymous source, is the fact that it's consistent with what we've been hearing from this White House for more than 2 years. And, you know, you don't have to believe it, but it is worth questioning. Is there some truth to this? Is it worth looking into? Clearly, there are problems in this White House. So I don't think anyone on the left is dancing around and happy about it, because what we want is a functional, intelligent, pragmatic president of the United States. And it's clear we don't have that right now.
We want 4.2%. GDP. And the last time I checked, didn't Obama say we had like 59 states and people spoke Austrian?
And Obama exceeded that GDP once in his presidency as well. And
for a couple of quarters.
4.2 in one quarter does not make a trend. Hopefully it will be, though.
Yeah, we'll see. Go ahead, Monica.
All of this salacious gossip, I mean, you know, people are fascinated by the personalities, but it's all a giant distraction from, number one, the actual conspiracy to target Donald Trump.
But it's not just, no. It's not just gossip when you're talking about the security of the United States. It's not gossip when you're talking about the security of the United States.
With the time
nice try.
All right, Monica, John, thank you so much. Ahead, Raymond Arroyo on the powerful life lessons of a working actor, believe it or not, and an addictive video game taking our kids, the world, by storm. Seen and unseen next. Some of the big cultural stories of the day. All right, let's bring in Fox News contributor Raymond Arroyo, who has a special announcement, which we'll get to in a moment. Raymond, over the weekend, pictures surfaced of former Cosby Show star Jeffrey Owens working at a grocery store. What's going on?
Well, this broke everywhere. Someone leaked pictures of Jeffrey Owens, who was on the Cosby Show years ago. He was working at Trader Joe's, bagging groceries. There he is.
Washington.
This became a viral story, and it was really people trying to job shame him. He's a working actor. In between jobs, he's making ends meet. For 15 months, he worked at Trader Joe's. Well, people tried to shame him with this, and he took it like a man, and he had great pride in the job he was doing. He turned to Robin Roberts on Good Morning America and had this to say about his job and the support he got unexpectedly. Watch.
There is no job that's better than another job. It might pay better, it might have better benefits, it might look better on a resume and on paper, but actually it's not better. Every job is worthwhile and valuable, and if we have a kind of a rethinking about that because of what's happened to me, that would be great. But no one should feel sorry for me.
The dignity of work. The dignity of work.
That's what I said that at my convention speech. I mean, my mother showed me that, waiting tables. Like, she said, you bet I wait tables, and if you're cheap, I'm going to call you out. Like, she's like, she waited tables till she was 74.
No honest job should be demeaned. This is the cruelty of social media, and there's a happy ending to this story. Tyler Perry himself, somebody who made his own way, pulled himself up by the bootstraps, has offered Jeffrey a job.
Fantastic.
We'll see if
I loved how he put it right back in their faces and said, hey, that's a job. There's dignity in every job. You know what he's not doing? He's not sitting down, woe is me,
and waiting for somebody else to help.
The world's so unfair, you're mean to me. Yeah, he's not doing that. And there's a new, well, it's not new, it's a video game that, parents, you know about it. captivated imaginations, apparently the schedules of a lot of young people and young adults.
Right.
What is it?
It's called Fortnite Battle Royale.
Are you just learning about Fortnite?
No, but this is
How long
really,
has that been on? Like a year and a half?
But it's gaining prominence, and here's the danger. 125 million users around the world.
Right.
It's free on multiple platforms. It's basically a Hunger Games in a cartoon format. People have to kill each other. The island they're on shrinks, and if you have to be the last man standing when it's over. I know kids at colleges playing this, in middle school. Here's the problem.
I'm going to start playing tonight.
Kids are addicted to this now. 60 Minutes on Australia just did a piece on a little boy, Logan Ford. He's 14 years old. He has not left the house in 2 years. He has bitten his mother, given her a concussion, and popped her in the face when she tried to take the game console for him.
That sounds like a
Here he is
problem.
being interviewed. Watch this.
Okay.
By day, Logan can be found in the same spot, playing the same game over and over again.
If it was my choice, I'd probably be playing about 14 hours.
Fortnite and similar video games have been Logan's sole obsession for the past 2 years, at the expense of almost everything else.
When did you last read a book? A long time ago.
You see, this kind of gaming, this type of play, the World Health Organization describes it as a gamer addiction. It leads to aggressive behavior, bad relationships with those around you, including your parents, and you see it there. You heard the bit about the book. They've done some research on the social media replacing books. We'll put this on the screen. In the 1970s, 60% of high schoolers were reading books. Today, 16% or less. Now, you know I've devoted a big part of my life to literacy, writing for kids. I have a big announcement. I want kids to read. I love that they're reading my books. I'm thrilled tonight to reveal for the first time, the cover of the third installment of my Will Wilder series for kids of all ages. It's called Will Wilder, The Amulet of Power. It premieres this February from Random House. It's available for pre-order now at willwilderbooks.com and all retailers.
And I didn't charge you for the sketch. I really got that line.
You did a lovely job. The purple was a lovely
I tried to make
cover.
it like the cowardly line in The Wizard of Oz, but I didn't quite capture
I'm going to try not to write you in as the villain of this book.
Oh, thanks. Thanks
I won't
a lot.
do that. I won't do that.
By the way, I think there's a problem when you bite your mother. That might be the...
Yes.
When biting or throwing of objects is involved at your parents, you have a problem.
None of my Will Wilder readers hit their mothers when they try.
Do you want to know why my kids don't play video games? Because of that? They don't have computers or screens?
It's a bad idea.
Because of that.
And their imaginations are stunted.
No
Read a book. It's a much better way, and it's a way to bring the family
Look,
together.
I have a problem with my phones. You know that.
I
get
know.
too much.
We are
but
going to
I don't,
do a full
guess what?
intervention with
I don't
you.
have my phone with me tonight.
Okay.
Raymond, thanks so much. Police groups are hitting it back hard against Nike's decision to make Colin Kaepernick the face of its latest Nike campaign. Dan Bongino weighs in next. Facebook's Sheryl Sandberg and Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey were on Capitol Hill today, where lawmakers grilled them about allegations of bias against conservatives. Here's Dorsey trying to explain Twitter's practices.
We don't consider political viewpoints, perspectives, or party affiliation in any of our policies or enforcement decisions.
The allegation that we make, the Republicans, is that you're discriminatory against us, against the Republicans.
We agree that the result was not impartial, and that is why we corrected and we fixed it.
So you do agree that there were more Republicans than Democrats?
I didn't say that, but I do agree.
Well, you can't have it both ways, sir.
Didn't Jack seem really bored with the whole hearing? He's like, okay, I'll be here. Joining me now for reaction, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy. You're the reason he showed up into town, but there's no problem here. There's no, look, it's just an algorithm. I mean, there's no problem.
They say there's no problem when we point it out, and you know what happened a couple days before the hearing? Then they admit that there was some problems. Then if you just watched...
He said no Republican, no bias.
No, they did agree that the algorithm created shadow banning. It just so happens it was just conservatives.
Explain shadow banning for our audience.
What happens on shadow
Doesn't
banning,
yet have a cell phone.
you put something up, nobody sees it. You have all these followers, nobody sees it, and you don't know it.
It's kind of like watching CNN. I mean, no one sees it. It's up there, but nobody sees it.
MSNBC, there's more letters than viewers. But the one thing that you had to find is the reason these conservatives like Devin Nunes got shadow banned, it wasn't something they did, it was who followed them. It wasn't anything they did, but because of who followed them, the algorithm picked this. And remember what Jack said during this time. Lots of times he said, well, I want to create a standard of fairness. But who determines the fairness? They have this Twitter Trust and Safety Council made up 48 groups. There's only one of those groups that leans partly towards the middle. The rest are
it's all
very liberal.
lefty. Oh, so they're setting the standards.
Exactly. And this algorithm, I pointed out to you. I follow you on Twitter. You talked about conservatives in Sweden because of immigration.
The election's coming up.
Yeah,
The Sweden Democrat Party, which is anti-migrant invasion, is going to win.
The algorithm said that was sensitive because I have the sensitive mark. Why would an algorithm pick something about immigration?
All right, we got to talk about this deal with the anonymous column. Lots of allegations, very self-serving. The anonymous guy looks like he's just awesome, Superman, and the rest of us need to be saved.
This man is a coward. If it's a man or woman, or if is it really someone? But the idea that this person has a taxpayer's job.
Somewhere in the government. Could be
somewhere
anywhere.
in the government, supposed to be serving the president who the taxpayers elected, but he thinks he is such an elitist that they know better than the voters, that they are protecting the voters in some way. I agree with the president. I think it is a real problem that they should come forward and say who this person is.
Yeah, I asked Lindsey Graham about this, and he kind of brushed it aside. The president said this is a national security concern. He said in the op-ed, and I think it's a he, but he said in the op-ed that he's working and others are working to thwart the president's agenda. And he calls Trump anti-democratic? That's anti-democratic.
That goes against the Constitution,
right,
where you're about to serve. That's why this person is a coward. If this person
could be traitorous, kind of. I mean, it's maybe a little stretch, but it
is traitorous that you're serving in an administration. You're saying you're at a senior level, and all you're doing is undermining the person that the American people elected to be president. And think of what about this president has been able to achieve. But this person sits there and does this?
Could it be, maybe it's not a political appointee, maybe it's a civil servant. Could be just one of the thousands of civil servants in senior positions. I mean, I worked in...
Yeah, but this person tries to write like they're in a really place of power.
Yeah.
The things that they claim.
But who believes that? I mean, I don't believe any of this stuff. Any rumblings of a 25th Amendment invocation?
No.
Have you ever heard anything like that from anyone in positions of power over there?
No, and I work with that cabinet almost every single day. I was with the president today. This is the thing I love about this man. He could have all these false things said about him. He does not lose track of what needs to get done. He's focused, let's secure the border. Let's get the tax 2.0 done. Let's make sure that we're securing Social Security. I mean, he is focused, and he never...
But he's impatient because there's a lot of you-know-what going on in Washington. It's slow rolling his agenda sometimes, and he gets ticked off, and I don't blame him. But what I really don't like is when we have staffers close to the president who don't like his agenda, who aren't pushing his agenda, and who are whispering to the New York Times or writing op-eds. That's a problem. I don't care how everyone brushes this. That's a problem. It's been a problem from the beginning.
And they
I
were
hope
never
it's
there
being
to help
addressed.
him. They were never there to help him.
No, they were there to undermine him from the beginning. And the GOP establishment's still trying to get back power. Love the hearing today. And I think
it's just the first. We're going to continue. And why wasn't Google? Google did not show up.
They're too busy in China.
But I got to give credit to Twitter, to Jack, and to Facebook for showing
up. They came. Cheryl came and Jack came.
They need to show.
Yeah, we'll call Sergey's office, see if the current CEO can stop by. Congressman, thank you so much. And let's get reaction to all today's news from Monica Crowley, Senior Fellow with the London Center for Policy Research, and John Summers, former aide to Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. All right, Monica, let's start with you. We go from the Woodward book, basically indicating to the MSNBC crowd that Donald Trump doesn't have his mental faculties,